Recently, I've had a ton of people tell me that I need to get a pickup truck. Now, this doesn't really make much sense to me since my personal vehicle, a Tesla Model 3, has done literally everything I could have asked of it other than having good range in the wintertime. But my big issues with pickup trucks is the fact that they're typically way too big, way too inefficient, and way too expensive. However, what you're looking at right here solves all those problems. This is the cheapest pickup truck you can buy in the United States, starting at just $28,100, the Ford Maverick Hybrid XL. Now, I guarantee there's gonna be people in the comments of this very video telling me that this is not a pickup truck. It's not body on frame, it can't go off-road. Who cares? It has more payload capacity than a Toyota Tacoma, has the same ground clearance, and costs $10,000 to $15,000 less, and tows just as much as I think the average person needs to. This can tow up to 4,000 pounds, it has a 1,500 pound payload capacity, gets 42 miles per gallon, and is cheap. So today I'm gonna take you on a tour of this one, showing you some of its quirks and features. Then I'm gonna take it for a drive and show you what it's like to drive this vehicle, because it actually is faster and more efficient than you may expect. Then I'm gonna tell you why you might wanna buy one if you value your money, because I know some people don't, but for those who do, this is the vehicle for you. And then I'm gonna tell you my final thoughts, close out the video, and let you guys go. Let's get started at the front. Up here, you do have this nice textured black grille insert. This is standard on XL and XLT trims. However, the higher trims do have a different designed front grille. You do have the blue Ford oval right here. Over here, you do have some facelifted front headlights compared to the previous gen Ford Maverick, if you can even call it that. They do have LED automatic high beams, so they will dim and bright automatically. However, they are not matrix, which I guess makes sense for such a cheap vehicle. However, what doesn't make much sense is that every single trim level has incandescent turn signals. Now, I think that's fine on a base model, but on a $42,000 Tremor, they should be LED turn signals. You also notice on these base trims that they are missing the signature LED running light. The Lobo and higher trims get that. The XL and XLT do not. Down here, you do have a cutout for a front tow hook, which you would have if you got an FX4 or a Tremor package. You do have some more cooling for your front radiator, your front license plate bracket, some more body colored trim, and that is pretty much it. Very basic front end design. Let's pop the hood and talk about the powertrain. Popping the hood, the latch is simply in the driver's side footwell, like a normal car, although you do have to double pull to open the hood. But the benefit of that is that you can simply just lift it up. There is no secondary latch that you have to do. No hood struts, unfortunately, but that kind of makes sense for such a cheap vehicle. Now let's talk powertrain specs. Now I am gonna read the specs off my phone because I don't have enough brain capacity to memorize all this crap, but here you go, let's get started. So the engine itself is a 2.5 liter Atkinson cycle inline 4, makes about 162 horsepower and 155 pound-feet of torque. It is all aluminum in construction except for the valve cover and the intake manifold. It is dual overhead cam and does have variable valve timing, but not variable valve lift to my knowledge. It has an 89 by 100 millimeter bore and stroke, so it is significantly undersquared for torque and efficiency. It has a 13:1 compression ratio, port injection instead of direct injection, which is nice to clean the carbon deposits off the back of the intake valves, and it requires a minimum of 87 octane fuel. That was a mouthful. Now, this engine is bolted to what Ford calls an eCVT. I'm gonna link a video up in the card to an engineering explain video that goes into depth on how the system works. But this system uses a planetary gear set and 2 electric motors to replicate the effect of a CVT without actually using any CVT components such as belts and clutches. The larger of those 2 electric motors does make 126 horsepower and 173 pound-feet of torque. That is 93 kilowatts if you were wondering. Those motors are also hooked up to a 1.1 kilowatt-hour lithium-ion battery. This powertrain combined makes 191 horsepower and 155 pound-feet of torque. Now you might be like, those numbers don't add up, but the torque curves don't overlap, so you can't add up horsepower directly. And this is just quoting the engine's torque figure, not including the electric motor's torque. The fuel economy, the front-wheel drive models get 42 miles per gallon in the city, 35 on the highway, and 38 combined. If you get the all-wheel drive models, you lose 2 in the city and then 1 on the highway and 1 in the combined loop. You do have a option for all-wheel drive, like I mentioned, and that all-wheel drive system can be optioned with the 4K tow package, which will add an additional transmission and engine cooling loop to help keep this powertrain cool when towing. And you do have a 13.8 gallon fuel tank, so at that combined 38 miles per gallon, this should get you 520 miles of range. One thing I will note is that since the horn is right under the hood, right near the fender, right in there. That's the horn. So it makes the horn really loud on the interior. If I come in here and close the door, it basically sounds like it's inside the truck. Now moving down to the wheels, you will notice that this XL trim is equipped with 17-inch steelies. Not a lot of vehicles come with steel wheels, and I actually think that these wheels look really cool on this truck. You will notice that it's wrapped in a Continental Pro Contact TX, and the size is a 225/65 R17. You have a McPherson strut, fully independent front suspension. This does have a 5-lug bolt pattern. It's 5x108 millimeters, which is different from most trucks because most use a 6-lug bolt pattern, but since this is so small, you don't really need it. You do have disc brakes all around. Not sure how many pistons the calipers are. I would assume the fronts are probably 1 or 2 and the rears are 1. And the brakes are not especially big, but they work pretty well. All right, time for the braking test. We're gonna do a 60 to 0 brake test. Brace. Braking in 3, 2, 1. You're 60 to 0 in 2.93. Left some marks on the road there. It stopped faster than I thought, 116.76 feet. I will also point out that different trim levels have different rim sizes. Every trim level has a 17-inch wheel except the Lobo and Lariat, which have a 19-inch wheel. Now in the rear, you will notice that you have the exact same wheel and tire as up front, so you can do rotations, which is good to see. But that's not what I wanted to point out. What I wanted to point out was that the suspension geometry varies depending on which Maverick you buy. If you get a front-wheel drive model, you have what is called a torsion beam rear suspension. Basically, it uses a stamped steel lower control arm, if you can even call it that connects the left and the right wheel together and creates a semi-independent rear suspension. The benefits of it is that A, it's cheap, B, you can get really high load capacity out of it super easily, and 3, that you have good body roll control because you don't need an anti-roll bar. The downside is that you have worse off-road capability because of lack of articulation, although since it's front-wheel drive, you're not going to go off-road anyway, and you do have a little less handling capability since there is no rear camber adjust. But other than that, there's no real downsides to this other than it is a little bit stiff. Now, if you get an all-wheel drive Ford Maverick, you get an independent multi-link setup in the rear, and that will feel much better when it comes to road dynamics and off-road capability, but it will increase the cost of the all-wheel drive add-on, which is about $2,200 if I'm not mistaken. But I think that is totally worth it because I don't think it drops much payload and it feels much better on the road. You do have disc brakes back here, like I mentioned up front, and you have an electronic parking brake. While I'm talking about suspension, this has 8.3 inches of ground clearance. Now you can get more ground clearance on the Ford Maverick Tremor, which increases it to about 9.5, 9.6, or you can actually get less ground clearance if you go with the Lobo, which is the sport truck variant. That drops it to about 7.5. This has plenty of clearance as is. I don't think you'll really need much more, but keep that in mind if you need more or less ground clearance if you're looking for that. I will like to note that this has a payload of 1,503 pounds, which is pretty good, even compared to full-size trucks. That is a lot higher than some mid-size trucks, including the Tacoma and the Ranger. However, you will lose a tiny bit of payload if you get all-wheel drive and if you get a higher trim level because there's more equipment. The lowest possible payload number I think you could see on one of these is about 1,150, but that's still plenty, I think, for the size of the bed, and you don't want a ton of payload for a daily driver as that'll make it super stiff, which it already is kind of stiff to meet that max payload, but remember, it's the work truck. It's got to do all the stuff. All right, getting inside the Ford Maverick, let's talk about the locks and key situation. Now, every Ford Maverick has power and central locking, which is good to see because trucks from the early 2000s and 90s have not had it. So if you're coming from one of those, this might be a nice upgrade. The thing that I will note when it comes to the XL specifically is the key fob. You'll see here that this vehicle actually has a flip key and this has a keyed ignition. That's why that is important. You can also option remote start and you do not get keyless unlock and start on the XL, of course, but you can also get that on other trims. Now you will notice that you do have a keyhole right here and you can option a keypad to type in a code to unlock the door. Fords have had that for a while. But the most important feature to me when it comes to unlocking and getting in is the Ford Pass app. You can lock and unlock the vehicle remotely, so if you want someone else to drive your car while you're not near it, you can lock the keys inside it with the app and then unlock it when they're near. And if you have a vehicle equipped with remote start, I believe you can also remote start it from the app. That is super nice to see. Let's hop inside. Hopping inside the Maverick, press the unlock button on the key fob and the driver door unlock because you don't have keyless entry on this trim, but you can get it on higher trims. Hopping inside and shutting the door. Quality door thunk there. And you'll notice that the materials in here are on the cheaper side, but they are tastefully done. You do have nice blue to contrast this black and gray on the dash. It feels like Ford put in a lot more thought into the design of the interior rather than just making everything cheap black plastic, because it is nice to have some different materials in here to break up the design a little bit. You do have a nice padded armrests right here and right here. Steering wheel feels a little plasticky, but you can get a leather and heated one in higher trims. 4-way manual adjust steering column. This is standard across the board. You have a manual 6-way adjustable seat, which is actually surprisingly comfortable, although it is not heated on this trim, but you can get it. And you can get leather and power adjust on higher trims. Your passenger seat is only 4-way manual adjust. That's a bit of a miss, although in the higher trims it can get 6-way manual adjust, but no power passenger seat. To start this thing up, you have your key, put it in the ignition and twist it. You'll notice that the truck turns on, but the engine does not, because it's a hybrid. You don't need the engine to run for the vehicle to be on. And that is nice because you can run your climate control without the engine needing to be on. Speaking of your climate control, it is baked into your touchscreen, but the screen is super responsive. I haven't had a huge issue with it this week messing with these controls because they're always there, they're not gonna go away, and they're nice and easy to press. Speaking of which, the fan blows incredibly hard and the AC works incredibly well in this vehicle. You do have 4 climate vents, your radio controls, your shift knob down here, you have park reviews, reverse, neutral drive, and low, and then your parking brake, your traction control, 2 cup holders, a tray down here that is removable. You can also get wireless charging on higher trims. In here you have more storage, and down here is where you have a USB-C and a USB-A, although on the higher trims, which is basically everything except the XL, this is where your start-stop button would be. And down here you also have a 12-volt cigarette style outlet. Over here on the left you have your light controls, which does actually show up on there to tell you what you've selected, your fuel popper button, your cargo light, your screen dimming controls, and then on the door you have a nice big cubby and a place where you can snap in a water bottle to hold it. 1 of 6 speakers in your sound system. The sound system sounds pretty decent. All right, let's do the sound system test. Let's go to the equalizer. There you go. Okay, so the bass is kind of rattly. Welcome back from the sound system test. It sounds pretty decent. It has enough bass, enough treble, not the best sound system. I think there is room for a better one, which you can get in the Maverick, the Bang & Olufsen, which is 8 speakers, so it's a sub and 7 other speakers, and that comes on the Lobo and Lariat and Tremor trims, so the lower 2 don't get that, but sound system sounds okay. A little bit above that speaker, you have 4 power window switches. All Mavericks have power windows, and the driver window is express down, but not express up. Your window lockout, and the lack of power mirrors. Now, power mirrors are optional on the XL trim, but you have to get the Ford Copilot 360 pack, which is a bit annoying, but the pack is only like $750. It gives you the power mirrors, blind spot monitoring, and a bunch of other little safety features. So that is 100% worth it in my opinion. But if you don't get that, you have to roll down your window and move the mirror manually, which is a bit of a pain. But you know, it is what it is. It's a base model. Up here, you do have your sun visors that do slide back and forth. No lights in the sun visor though. I don't know if the higher trims come with them. Up here, you do have a sunglass holder, your 2 cabin lights, a switch to control the cabin lights, your dimmable mirror, and that's pretty much it for the interior. It's pretty basic, but it offers a lot of features, including this 13.2-inch center infotainment display with standard Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, and a standard 8-inch driver information display that has a bunch of cool gauges for the hybrid system, including the EV coach, which will show you how to stay in the correct throttle position to get it into electric mode and get the best MPG. And all the technology in here is super fast and works great. And it is nice that these screens are standard so you don't feel like you're getting in some sort of poverty spec vehicle without these screens, because it comes on every one of them. Overall, the interior, super comfortable. Everything in here does its job, and it is cheap and cheerful, but in a good way, and I support that. Let's hop in the back seat and give give it a little bit of a review because there are some things that are missing back there, but it's not a deal breaker. And I think for the average person that is buying this as a daily driver, you probably won't notice it. Hopping into the back of the Ford Maverick, you'll notice that the door opening isn't actually that wide. It's only probably like 2.5 to 3 feet wide. Now, this doesn't pose a problem for getting in and out, but it does pose a problem if you have to put a child in a car seat back here. There is ISOFIX anchor points, and the top tether, ow, is behind the backrest, as you can see right here, as well as your roadside equipment. But getting a child seat in this gap may prove to be a little bit challenging. But let's hop back here. Now, sitting behind myself at 6'1", I do actually have enough legroom. I can stick my legs into this pocket behind the seat, or I can spread my legs out like this. And I do actually have enough headroom to sit up perfectly straight. So this actually has more room in the back than a Toyota Tacoma, which is surprising considering how small it is. You do have a grab handle right here with an extra little hook to hang your coats. Your rear windows do go all the way down, which is nice to see. And you have 2 USB-C ports back here, and you can option a 120 volt 400 watt outlet on the back of this console if you get the XLT Lux package or higher. You also have this little flex clip, Ford calls it. This is so you can 3D print accessories such as cup holders and stick them in this little clip right here. The only thing that you're missing as far as features go compared to other trim levels is the center armrest. There's no flip down center armrest like you get on the higher trims, and this is actually the only trim that doesn't have it, which is a bit unfortunate. And that armrest would also have cup holders. You do have an LED dome light, 2 speakers back here on your C-pillar, so don't crank the volume, otherwise your rear passengers will go deaf. You have a seat back pocket on the back of the passenger seat, and that's pretty much it. The back seat is pretty basic, although if I hop back out, you will notice that under this seat, you do have more storage, more clips to mount other accessories, and your 12-volt battery. So the back seat is totally usable. It's not a highlight of this vehicle. Let's move to the bed because that's actually where a lot of the magic happens. Now, before we move back to the bed area, I would like to point out something with this rear window. On the higher trim levels, aka Lobo, Lariat, and Tremor, you can option a power sliding rear window that you can control from the front seats with a little window switch. On the base 2 trim levels, so that's XL and XLT, you can't get an opening window anymore. They took that option away for the 2025 and 26 model year. Previously, you could get a manual slider, but the power slider was always restricted to the upper trim levels. So if you want an opening rear window, you're gonna have to spec up for the higher trim Ford Maverick. Up here, you do have a cargo light, which is incandescent, an incandescent third brake light, and up here you have your antenna for your FM radio, satellite radio, and your Wi-Fi hotspot. And that's pretty much it, except for this little black cladding to protect the cab, back of the cab. One thing I will note is that since the bed is so low in this vehicle, you can actually reach all the way in and grab stuff out of the bed, which is super convenient. Anyway, let's move on to the rear. Moving along to the rear, let's talk about the rear end design. Now, these taillights are pretty basic and they are incandescent only. There's no LEDs back here. The reverse light, the taillights, and the turn signals, as well as brake lights, are all incandescent bulbs. And this is the case for every single Maverick. Every Maverick has incandescent taillights, which is a bit of a bummer. I feel like if you spend 40 grand on a Lariat, it should be LED. But as far as I know, it's not. Moving down to the tailgate, you have your Ford logo on this little raised plinth here with the backup camera underneath. Maverick is embossed into the tailgate. You have your tailgate release handle and a keyhole. That's because on the XL trim, you cannot lock it with the power locking. You actually have to stick the key into the tailgate and lock it like this. Although you can get power tailgate locking on XLT and up. Dropping the tailgate, you'll notice that it is not damped at all, so you have to be careful. And that is the case for every single Maverick, although it is easily upgradable in the aftermarket to add a damper. You'll notice that this actually has a steel bed, and the dimensions of which I will read to you once I get onto my phone and find it. This is a 4.5 foot bed. It's 54.4 inches. It's 53.3 inches from bedside to bedside, although it is only 42.6 in between the wheel wells, and it is 20.3 inches deep. Now, it is a fairly small bed, but you can actually do a lot with it since it has such a high payload and a steel floor. And if you need to transport things such as 4x8 sheets of plywood, you can detach the cables and attach them up here to raise the tailgate up, and then you can set your 4x8 sheet on top of the wheel well where it actually fits, and you can strap it down using these bottle opener / tie down points. One thing I will note about the XL trim though is that you lose 4 tie down points compared to the other trims. So this only has 6 compared to 10, which is a bit of a bummer. Other things to note back here is that every Maverick has 12 volt accessory power behind this little flap. So if I pull this out, you have a little pigtail where you can plug in things to 12-volt accessory power, and this is nice if you want to add in lights or something like that. Behind these covers on higher trims, you can option a power inverter, which is 400 watts like the one on the inside, and an LED bed light. Although I kind of wish it offered closer to like a 1500 watt power inverter, since this is a hybrid and it should be able to do that, but cheap truck, you know what you're getting. Over here on the other side, you have an additional blanking plate, and on higher trims, that would be a cubby where you can store things such as tie-down straps and stuff like that. Overall, the bed is fairly basic, but it does have a couple tricks up its sleeve, and these notches to lay 2x4s in to create a racking system to divide up your bed space, and Ford calls that flex bed, trademark. Now let's talk about towing. Now you'll realize that this Maverick doesn't even have a hitch. The XL is the only trim that doesn't come with a hitch as standard, but every other trim, including this one if you option it, has a 2,000-pound hitch receiver with a 4-pin connector. Now, if you need more towing capability, you can get the 4K tow package, which stands for 4,000 pounds, which increases your tow capacity to 4,000 pounds, but of course you have to get all-wheel drive. But you also get some other things for that. You get a 7-pin connector, a trailer brake controller, beefed up engine and transmission cooling, and on the Lariat trim, you get Pro Trailer Backup Assist, which is the little knob that'll help you line up the trailer, because it'll steer the wheel it'll turn the steering wheel for you while you back up, and you just steer it with that little knob. Although I've never really liked that feature, nor has anyone, because while it does have it, I don't really think it's that useful. Now I wanted to talk about styling, because this is the most basic of the Ford Maverick lineup, and I still think it looks really good with these steel wheels. You can obviously get larger alloy wheels on the Lariat and Lobo trims, but I don't think it's really necessary. I actually like the look of these. You do have this nice fender flared arch right here, although it doesn't actually protrude, it's actually an indent, but it just gives it a little bit of design to break up some of the boringness going on. And you have some nice crevices in the hood to make it bulge up a little bit more, to make you feel like you're driving a truck, because even though this is a small vehicle, when you're sitting in it, the hood is actually very high and it gives you that commanding road feel, which is what truck buyers want. Now, compared to something like the Ford F-Series, this is a lot smaller. Obviously, you can see the resemblance in the front end. It looks fairly similar, although the headlights are a little bit different. But this is about 3.5 feet shorter than a crew cab short bed F-150. That is huge, and it's about 10 inches narrower, not including the mirrors. This is a lot easier to drive in small environments because it's way easier to park, and because it's shorter, you can make tighter turns and not have to swing out as wide when you're towing or doing stuff like that. I also thought I might mention that on Lobo, Lariat, and Tremor, the door handles are actually paint matched, not plastic. Same thing goes with the mirror skull caps. The Lariat, Lobo, and Tremor have painted mirrors. The XLT and XL just have black plastic, although they do fold, but they are manual. Another thing I thought I'd mention is that on the higher trims, or every trim excluding XL, these pillars are actually vinyl wrapped black. This is the only one where the pillars will be body color. As far as other styling cues go, I will say that the lack of separation between the cab and the bed does look a little bit weird, and that's always been a gripe of mine with the Maverick styling, but you can't really avoid it since all unibody trucks will look like this. And the only other truck in this size class is the Hyundai Santa Cruz, and that thing is hideous. So this is the only non-hideous option, and yes, I guess the Honda Ridgeline is in a similar segment, but it's bigger than this, so I wouldn't really count it. So I wanted to talk about trim levels and pricing for the Ford Maverick, because you can spend a lot of money on one of these vehicles, but you don't have to. You can see that the XL starts at $28,145, the XLT is $30,645, the Lobo starts at $35,930, so a pretty significant jump. The Lariat starts at $38,090, and the Tremor is $40,645. Now on the XL, XLT, and Lariat, you can option the EcoBoost engine, and that will actually save you a considerable amount of money. You can see on the XL it saves you about $1,000, on the XLT it saves you $1,000, and on the Lariat it saves you over $2,200. Also, the Lobo and the Tremor are only available with the EcoBoost, and those are also only available with all-wheel drive as well as the Lariat. Keeping that in mind, if you need all-wheel drive, on the base 2 trims you have to add it, and that is a $2,200 option. So you immediately have to factor that in to the MSRP if you want to get it on the same level as a Lariat. If we also select the hybrid engine and go into the XLT, you can see here that there is this XLT Lux package. Now, if you want features features such as heated seats, leather-wrapped heated steering wheel, power seats, etc. You have to option this luxury package to get it on the XLT. Now, once you add all-wheel drive and you add the Ford Copilot 360 package, which does not include adaptive cruise on this trim level, but is standard on the Lariat trim and you don't have to pay for it, you'll notice that the estimated net price is about 38 grand. Now, that is exactly the MSRP of the Lariat. So if you go into the Lariat, obviously you're gonna have to pay more for it because of destination, but then all you have to do is add the 4K tow package and you're at $41,375 for a much better sound system, dual zone climate control, leather seats, a better looking exterior design with projector LED headlights and ambient running lights, much bigger wheels, blacked out mirror caps, a 360 camera, and a whole host of other features that you just can't get on the XLT, including a power sliding rear window. I'm not gonna keep blabbering on about it, but I think if you're gonna get an XLT Lux package, just spend a little bit extra and get the Lariat. Now, if you want something a little bit more basic, but you don't want the extreme basicness of the XLT without the Lux package is, I think, a great middle ground, because you get stuff like the additional bed tie-down points, the rear flip-down armrests, non-steel wheels if you're into that, a little bit nicer interior trimming, stuff like that. If you value those sort of things, then I think the XL non-Lux is a great option to do. And if you're looking to get one with the 2-liter EcoBoost, if you want, you can get the Maverick Lobo, which rides a little bit lower, has a different transmission, and will be a little bit sportier to drive. Now, if you're looking for off-road capability, you can head over and look at the Maverick Tremor, which is the most expensive option in the lineup, but it offers the most features and will definitely be the most off-road capable, with about 1.5 inches more ground clearance than the standard hybrid, and a different front bumper for more clearance, a nicer all-wheel drive system, which also comes on the Lobo for better handling off-road and on-road, and it also comes fully loaded with every option right out of the gate. I don't think you really need it if you're just going to be doing basic dirt road / slight off-road driving. If you're just going to be doing stuff like that, you do not need the Tremor, and I think the savings on the fuel alone will make up for the difference in the speed and off-road capability of the powertrain. All right, so that was a look at the pricing and trim levels of this vehicle. While it has increased over 8 grand in the past 4 years compared to when it launched in 2022, I still think it's a great value. Now, let's take this thing out on the road and see how it drives. All right, let's drive the Ford Maverick. Unlocking it and hopping inside. We'll stick the key into the ignition and turn it, and you'll notice that there's no engine sound. That's because it's a hybrid, so it doesn't need to have the engine on for the vehicle to be on. I'll buckle my seatbelt, and I will return to eco mode, thank you. And we'll twist the little dial shift knob into drive. Notably, it doesn't stop once you get to drive. It keeps turning, which is a little bit interesting. And you notice up here on my dash that I actually have this little thing that says electric. This is the EV coach, and it'll help you stay in electric mode the most frequently to get the best fuel economy. I always like to look at that gauge just to see how much or how many miles per gallon I can get, and this is how you do that. If I'm just lightly on the pedal, you can see I'm in electric mode, but if I floor it, it goes into hybrid mode, and you want to stay in electric mode as much as possible to get the best fuel economy. Pulling out onto the main road, we are in eco mode, so the throttle is a little bit dull in its response, but accelerating still got decent amounts of power. We will flip it into sport mode very quickly for this little corner here. I'm going to turn the traction control off by pressing that button. You can hold it and it'll turn advanced track off, but you know, we're not going to need that. As you can see, it is a CVT, so it is just droning away, but it accelerates pretty quickly. That's 70 miles an hour. It gets up and goes. It's not the fastest thing in the world with only 191 horsepower, but you know, it moves faster than I think a lot of people expect these to. This does 0 to 60 at under 7.2 seconds, which I know is a very specific number, but I have timed it and that's what I got, 7.25 in wet conditions. So for a front wheel drive vehicle, that's actually pretty impressive. Now going down this little side road, if I flip it back into eco mode, you can see here that on the EV coach, we are in all electric mode. Now, if you keep your feet light on the pedal, you will stay in all electric mode and it'll drastically increase your fuel economy. The highest I've seen in the city is over 55 miles per gallon, according to the trip computer, which I have verified at the pump on a different leg. So it was a different number, but it was verified and it was accurate. That 55 miles per gallon is achievable if you drive gently. And as you can see, I'm doing 31 miles an hour in electric mode without needing to dip into gasoline power at all. And that's because the electric motor in this truck is actually decently strong with 126 horsepower. All right, doing a little turning radius test here. Flipping around. The turning radius isn't the sharpest thing in the world, but it is tighter than most pickup trucks because of its small size. Nice high resolution backup camera there. You will hear the little reverse chime it plays when you go into reverse. And we'll do a little acceleration here from 0 in pure electric mode. So that's as fast as I can accelerate without going out of my little electric bubble right there. I'm going 20 miles an hour, 22, 23. The fastest I've been able to go in one stint from 0 to top speed in electric mode was 45 miles an hour. And it actually didn't run out of power, it just ran out of room. So it will take a little bit of time to get up to that speed, but you can see I'm doing 35 miles an hour in electric mode and I have not kicked on the gas engine at all. The electric motor in this truck is surprisingly strong for a hybrid, and the distance you can go on that 1.1 kilowatt hour battery is actually pretty surprising. We're gonna turn on to the main road. Turn signal noise. Pretty mellow, pretty quiet, feels pretty premium. I will say the switches in here are nicely damped, such as the turn signal stock. We're gonna flip it into sport mode and hit a little acceleration stint here. Pull out into the road. We're in sport mode. No one is behind us. And come to a stop. Wheel spin. Oh my God. 30 miles an hour, 40, 50, 60. We're gonna keep going. Speed limit 70, 70, 75, and there you go. This thing actually is surprisingly quick for only 191 horsepower. It feels like it's a lot more power than that, and it realistically is because, you know, the combined figure isn't telling you the whole story, but it actually feels like more close to 230 to 240 to me. In sport mode, you will get some simulated gear shifts from that CVT. It's really hard to hear because the engine is actually fairly quiet at medium to low loads. I would like to adjust my passenger side mirror as it is facing a little bit low, but I can't because I don't have power mirrors, and if I roll the window down, it'll destroy the camera audio. So at about 55 mile an hour, there's actually not a ton of wind noise. It actually is a lot quieter than I was expecting in the wind noise department. So that is good to see. This thing is not going to be loud on the highway, and the seat is actually very comfortable, although it is not heated or anything fancy. It's got nice support for my body. It's not uncomfortable, but it's not like a massage seat in like a Maybach or something. It's not gonna wow you, but it is more comfortable than I was expecting for such an inexpensive vehicle. See if I can dip back into electric mode. There you go. I'm in electric mode right now at 57 miles an hour. Can I go faster? Nope, it kicked me out. If you put it into low mode, it will increase the off-throttle regen by not a ton, but a decent amount. It is noticeable. Or if you need more regen, you can just dig into the brake pedal and it will blend more regen in as you press the brakes more and more. Now coming up to the stop sign, you will see that something will pop up on the screen once I come to a full stop. That is the brake coach, and it's only saying 99% rather than 100 because I accidentally dipped into the friction brakes a little bit during that stop. But if you're super smooth on the brake pedal, you can get 100% energy returned, and I have done that several times, and it's super easy to do. Pulling out here, we're gonna give it some gas. Wheel spin. CVT doing what CVTs do best. Just making noise. But like I mentioned, this is an e-CVT, not a traditional CVT, so it's gonna be more reliable than you may expect. We're doing 60 miles an hour. We're still in electric mode. We did dip into gas back there, of course, but we're doing 60 miles an hour in all electric. For hybrids, this is pretty good for a non-plug-in, I will say. We're doing 62. I think I might actually be able to pass this guy. This trip, we've averaged 31.6 miles per gallon, and I have not been driving it that gently. So you can get really good fuel economy doing very basic things. You don't have to hypermile it to get good fuel economy. It will just reward you if you do. As you can see, we've done 6.4 miles total, and 2.7 of those have been electric. On a little bit more coarse road surface, there is a decent amount of tire noise, but it's not unbearable, and I think it's to be expected at a vehicle at this price point. One thing you'll also notice is that the ride quality is a bit on the stiffer side, but remember that this is a front-wheel drive model, and that means that it has the torsion beam rear suspension, so it's going to be a little bit stiffer than the independent suspension that you would get on the all-wheel drive versions of the Ford Maverick. Okay, why are we going 40 and a 60? Hello? Chucking it into the corner. One thing I will say is that the steering is a little bit rubbery, and what I mean by that is how do I say this? It self-centers a little bit more strong than other vehicles I've driven, and the weight is a little bit artificially heavy, and not in a good way, I would say, but it's not terrible. I don't hate it. It's a little bit more artificial feeling than some other vehicles I've driven, even compared to like something like a Tesla, which is known to have pretty numb steering feel. This just feels artificially heavy and kind of, I'm not a huge fan of it, but for this type of vehicle, I think it's totally acceptable. It's not a deal breaker. It doesn't give you that sporty feel that you think you would want from something a little bit lighter like this. Obviously, this isn't light like a Miata, but it's in the 36 to 3,700 pound range, so it's not heavy. And while the torsion beam rear end does help with the body roll, the lack of a camber adjustment does make it to where you can't do a ton of hard corners without breaking traction. I'm gonna pull into this little road here for a second, and I'm gonna let these vehicles go by just to give us a little bit more space to do some more spirited driving. Flipping around here in reverse. One thing that is unique to this vehicle is that there is actually no reverse gear in the transmission. It just uses the electric motor to reverse. But despite that, you have a lot of reverse torque. So the motor is actually really strong. It's just detuned in normal drive compared to reverse, just to give you a little bit more of a smooth feel. Let's put it into sport. And we chuck it around this bend here. For a truck, this thing actually handles pretty well. Now we'll chuck it into this corner, going about 50. Tires are squealing. Honestly, it holds on pretty well. Those Continentals are doing work. This thing is more stable than I think I expected and a lot of people expect, especially considering the fact that there's a rollover warning on the sun visor. Doing a little bit of regen here off throttle. It's not aggressive. You can't one pedal drive this like an EV, but it gets you closer to that. And if you're smart with how you decel and use the low button, you can get enough off throttle regen to nearly come to a stop, maybe about 8 to 10 miles an hour, and it will save your brake pads, which is nice. This does have an open differential, which is typical for vehicles like this. So you will get inside wheel spin if you're hard on throttle throughout a corner, but this isn't a sport truck. That's why you buy the Maverick Lobo, and I think the Lobo will be a lot more fun to drive because it does have paddle shifters and it has an actual automatic transmission to use, so it will feel more sporty than this, and I think that is a good thing. We're gonna turn around and head back that other way just to get some more spirited driving in. Typically I would go on that other road, but since this road is getting fairly busy today, I'm going to alter my driving path. Let's put it back into eco mode. Watch out for this guy in the PT Cruiser. Even in eco mode, it picks up equally well. Getting a little bit more regen here. Handling around that bend is perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with it. I'm gonna go a little bit slow to let this PT get out of the way, although there is a truck behind me, but we are in electric mode, so we are being super efficient. And you can see that even up this slight hill, it is accelerating in electric mode. Digging into the brakes there. The brake is actually pretty sensitive, but not in a bad way. You just have to get used to it. You can see there when it goes white past this green line, I'm actually using friction brakes. Accelerating here, 60, 70. The hybrid system in this thing is really the whole reason why I like this truck so much. I don't think it would be as good with just the simple 2-liter EcoBoost, and the 2-liter EcoBoost, because it's turbocharged and a smaller displacement, is going to be less reliable long term. Plus the 8-speed autos in the Maverick are actually underrated for the engine's torque output. I would highly recommend just going with the hybrid, as it's going to be a lot more reliable than the EcoBoost and a lot more reliable than I think most people think it is. We're currently following an F-150 Raptor, and you can see that this thing is a lot smaller than that. He's taking up nearly the whole lane, and I have at least a couple feet of wiggle room on either side. Here we go, we're in electric mode in the corner. And even in electric mode, I'm keeping up with this guy in the Raptor, just barely though. Come on, I'm gonna see how long I can hold it here. 45, 46. Give me more speed. 47 downhill. We're doing 51. Uh-oh. The gap is shrinking, my window. So the battery is draining. But I'm still in electric mode. Still going, still going. See, you can keep it in EV for a long time. You could probably go 2 to 3 miles in electric if you're really careful. You're still going. Okay, there we go. Kicked it out there, but I could have kept it in electric mode. I just would have had to lose speed up that hill. But we're still getting 32 miles a gallon with that spirited driving. So no matter how you drive this thing, you're going to get good fuel economy out of it. Not a lot of vehicles can do that. So great job, Ford. I love this truck. I want one. Sign me up. Now, should we dive into the debate on whether or not this is actually a pickup truck? Because some people say, oh, it's just a Ford Escape with a truck bed. It's not a truck. Well, for what most Americans use their pickup trucks for, which is commuting and taking the kids to soccer practice, this does those things really well, and it costs nearly half of what an equivalently spec'd half-ton truck would. And you're getting double the fuel economy, and it's easier to park, and the technology is just as good. I really don't see the need for the Ford F-150 if you truly do not need the towing capacity. Or if you need more payload, the F-150 offers that, but honestly not by that much. It only has about 200 to 300 pounds more payload than this compact truck. You're not really losing out on much other than towing capability, but most Americans don't tow anything more than a small boat, a pop-up camper, maybe a couple jet skis to the lake. This thing will do that easily without breaking a sweat, and you'll get way better fuel economy doing it. Ooh, there's a Maverick Lobo. Let's actually pull in there. But anyway, props to Ford for offering such a, maybe this isn't a Lobo. Is you a Lobo? Yes, it is. Nice. There's a Bronco Sport. That's what this is based off. Here's the Maverick Lobo. You can see that it's got a different front end, and those are the headlights from the Lariat. That only comes with the 2-liter EcoBoost. The 2-liter EcoBoost is still a pretty good motor. Wouldn't dissuade someone for getting that motor, but the hybrid is just so good, and that honestly makes this vehicle so much more fun to drive for me because it gives me a game to maximize my fuel economy. We'll put it into sport mode here. We're gonna turn advanced track off. Oh, wheel spin. This thing it checks all the boxes for me. Now, would I like it to have a little bit more towing capability? Sure. Would I like it to have a little bit more back seat space? Also sure. But it's a good compromise to get all these things that it does into such a small, affordable package. It's the gas-powered vehicle I would buy if I was to go back to ICE for my daily transportation. Because as you guys know, I have a Tesla Model 3. I love that thing. But this thing gets way too good fuel economy to ignore, even if you're used to driving EV. And because it's a hybrid, I still get to scratch that electric car itch in a way. It's just so nice to drive. It's quiet, it's comfortable, it does all the things. And I still can't get over that on the used market, these things are in the 20s, and you can get a 2025 model year in the 20s. So while the base price has increased over the past 4 years, you can get a used Maverick for really cheap if you look. So if you're honestly needing a basic transportation vehicle, go get a 2023 Maverick, the pre-facelift with the hybrid, and you'll basically have the same vehicle that I'm sitting in here, albeit with worse technology, for like 15 grand if you get one with a little bit higher mileage. Out of the 17.8 miles that we've done, 7.2 of those have been electric, and we've averaged 33 miles per gallon with spirited driving. So while the mixed fuel economy number for this truck is 38 miles a gallon, and what I would call that driving is closer to highway than mixed, we still are getting pretty close to the highway fuel economy number. Just because I've been using that electric mode, I'm actually getting better fuel economy than I did on my highway MPG tests. Stay tuned for that video. This is where this vehicle excels, is in stop and go traffic, because you can just inch forward on electric mode, and then when you stop, you regen. Let's see if I can pull out here using just electric mode. There we go, that's all electric. And the battery's not even fully charged because I have accelerated faster than this before in EV mode. All right, that wraps up our test drive. Let's end the video, close it out, and give you guys my final thoughts. All right, so that was a drive in the Ford Maverick Hybrid. And while it isn't the fastest thing in the world, it has plenty of get up and go. The 0 to 60 is just under 7.2 seconds, and this thing has plenty of power when you're not towing. When you are towing, I feel like going up hills at high rates of speed might be a challenge for this powertrain, but it makes up for it in its efficiency and simplicity. I really like the powertrain in this thing, and it's actually making me consider one of these for myself because of the size and ease of use of a vehicle of this type. Because you can put stuff in the back, you can put stuff in the back seat because there's enough room, unlike a Toyota Tacoma, in my opinion, and it has enough long-range distance in terms of fuel capacity to actually be a great road trip vehicle. It's comfortable, it's quiet, it checks all the boxes for a pretty low price point. Now, should you buy one? Well, I think the answer is unanimously yes. I don't think there is a single instance where some family could not use a vehicle like this. Other than maybe needing more backseat space or needing higher towing capability, if you just need to go get stuff from Lowe's or Home Depot, bring it back in a truck, this will do that, and it will save you a crap ton on 1, the purchase price, and 2, the fuel cost. So keep that in mind when you're buying your next vehicle. Maybe you don't need as much capability as you actually think you do, and something like this may suit you very well. Anyway, that'll be the end of this video. Hope you guys liked it. Leave a comment and like and subscribe for the next video. Ring the notification bell, do all those things that they always say for you to do, even though no one actually does. And I'll see you in the next video.